In this video, we're going to walk through all the different ways of interacting with dashboards as a reader user in QuickSight. So first off, a reader user is basically just a consumer type user in QuickSight. So you can view any dashboards that have been shared with you, you can drill down and interact, and we'll show you all the ways that you can do that today. But you're not able to create new analyses or new data sets or new dashboards. So you're basically consuming things that other folks have published and shared with you. So first off, I'm logged in and I'm at my home screen here. So you'll see that you have a section here for all your dashboards that, again, if these are the ones that have been shared with you, so you will never see something that you don't have access to. A section where you have your favorites. An easy way to make something in a favorite or to remove it is to star it. So for instance, if I wanted to include this as one of my favorites as well, I can mark a star next to it. And now it shows up here in my list of favorites as well. There is a section where you can get started on a few sets of tutorial videos and how to use actions for interactivity, just a quick welcome video, as well as using the mobile application. So some quick tutorial videos specifically for readers there. Here, if you'd like to change your language of the UI, you can. It's localized in 9 different languages today, and we're adding 5 more in just the next month or so. Sometimes when you log into QuickSight, you'll see a What's New section that pops up, which is notifying you on all the different features that have been launched since the last time you logged in. So this will automatically show for you sometimes, but if you want to get back to it, say you had closed it, if you're on your home screen and you click on your username, you can find that What's New there as well. Some other links here to launch the community where you can, it's basically a set of forums where you can post questions or answer questions. You can post even ideas of new features if you'd like here to the forums. So that's a quick launch into the forums. If you'd like to send feedback, there's a quick way to do that as well. And the help will go to our online documentation. So that's just a little bit around the interface here. Last thing I forgot to point out is you can search as well. So the search will go through any names of any content, again, that's been shared with you. So let's open up one of these examples. And we'll walk through a number of different ways where you can drill down in QuickSight. Now, some of these you may have in your dashboards because the author has included those ways of drilling down. Some of them you might not have just because the author didn't include those, but I'm just going to show you the list of all the different ways, and then some of these may appear for you and some of them may not. However, so on the top here, you have this section for controls. So this you can expand and collapse just by clicking on this area up here. So usually controls are used as filters, and usually they're configured to affect everything on the dashboard. So I changed my segment here, and now notice all the visuals on this dashboard are updating and filtering just to that one segment I had chosen. Now, controls can be used in other ways as well. Sometimes they may be used as like a what if parameter that affects some kind of calculation. Sometimes you can use them as a way to switch what field is being used in a particular visual. So sometimes your authors may have configured them that way, but generally they're used as filters. So depending on the type of field, for date fields, you'll get things like calendar UIs. For categorical fields, you'll usually get drop-down menus or a text search box. For numbers, you might get slider bars, but generally you have a set of controls on the top. So that's a kind of traditional way of setting filters. Some other ways is if you just try and click on some of the visuals in the dashboards that you have, oftentimes there will be what are called actions turned on those. So for instance, I clicked on this retail slice of my donut chart here, and now everything is filtered just to retail. So even all my insight widgets on the top and my time trend and my KPIs, everything in this whole dashboard is now filtered to retail. So again, these are called filter actions, and you can just try and click on different items in the visuals that you have, and if there's actions turned on, you'll see this kind of filtering behavior. They can kind of also combine together and sort of daisy chain across multiple visuals. So for instance, here, if I chose tech, and if I also now choose something here, like for December, it's actually going to show me the combination of those two filters and all the other visuals. So I'm looking at just tech and just from December 2016. So this is called cascading filter actions, and this is a new behavior that just launched at the beginning of April. So previously you could only have one thing selected in one visual on the whole dashboard, but now if you have actions on many visuals, you can kind of make one selection at least in all the visuals and they'll all combine together. So other ways of drilling down maybe are a hierarchical drill path. So potentially the author has included something like this, where if you right click, you may see another option to drill down. So here I say drill down to the subcategories. So what this is doing is I clicked on retail, so it's going to put a filter on retail and then drill to whatever the next level in that hierarchy was, which in this case is my subcategories. If you want to drill back up, you can click on this little arrow, or if you just right clicked on this one of those slices again, it would drill back up as well. So like similarly over here, if I click into finance, I could drill into the customers within finance. And then if I take one of these customers, I could drill into the products that they've purchased from me in this fictional data set. So this has 3 levels of drill down built into this one. And again, here you get the arrows where you can drill at one level at a time, or if there's more than one level of drill, this will let you go all the way back up to the top. So keep an eye out for those types of drill down. Sometimes it'll tell you in the title, but if you see this little arrow when you select a visual, that means that there's a drill down built in. So I have that turned on a lot of these visuals here. Similarly over here, if I right click, I'll see that those drill down capabilities. So one last way of doing drilling is to drill from one sheet to another sheet. So notice I've got a couple different tabs up here. In QuickSight, we call these sheets, kind of similar to Excel terminology. So we have a drill down here that goes from one sheet to another sheet. In this case, we're going from a sheet to another sheet in the same dashboard, but this may go to a completely different dashboard. Or maybe it opens an entirely different web page altogether that's not even QuickSight at all. So this is it's called a URL action, which can open other web pages. So like here, if I make a selection on Seattle, for instance, I have this one that says see details for Seattle. And what this is doing is just bringing me to the second tab here, and it's applying a filter. So we see that on my controls, that it's showing me that the filter for Seattle had been applied there, as well as in this column here in this table, we can see that same filter being applied. So those are the various ways of drilling down. So some other types of interactivity that you might try, one would be exporting. So if you select any visual, you'll see this little dots here where you can choose to export to a CSV. So this is going to grab the data from inside that visual. It's not the underlying data, excuse me, it's just the data that you're seeing in that visual right now. So this will export up to 1 million rows. So you can export quite a good amount of data if you need to. So here's that same data. It exports to a CSV format, but I chose just to open it in Excel. So we see that same data that we had in this table here. So particularly tables and actually tables specifically have pagination built into them. So if I go back to all cities here, we actually can show multiple pages of data. So see here, I'm choosing to show just the first 500 records, and I have page 2, 3, 4, up to however many pages you need for how much data you have. And just a quick note is when you do that export to CSV, it is grabbing data across all the pages. So you don't need to do it one per page, for instance. And again, that goes up to 1 million records when you export. Let's go take a look at one last example here. Sorry, one other quick note. When you see these little lock icons on any of the dashboards, this means that there's row level security being applied. And what row level security does is it filters the data that each person is going to see in that dashboard. So we might both have access to the exact same dashboard and it has the exact same URL, but when you and I go to visit it, we may see different data presented. So maybe just data from our customers or just data from the states that we're assigned to, whatever kind of filter they built into it. But point being, we'll all see different data when we get to that. So that's what that little icon means. So quick aside there. Let's just go look at one more example. So this is a more kind of traditional tabular based report where I've got a whole bunch of filters here on the top. I could say I want to show either the top 100 or just the top 30. Set a minimum sales bar here, so I could say I only want to see something with over 200,000. Just some other ways of applying filters we see on this one. Sorting. If you click on the top of any header, you'll see the ability to sort by that column. So now we're sorting by our quantity. When you export after you have sorted, the export will also be sorted, just so you know. So another example here using a pivot table, sometimes called a crosstab, but in QuickSight this is called a pivot table visual. So with pivot tables, you naturally get this kind of grouping and kind of expand collapse type functionality. So notice I have 3 levels here. I go from segment to regions to customers. If I want to expand just the central just for enterprise, I'll see all the customers there just by expanding that. Or if you want to expand all of them at the same time, when you click on the top on the header here, you'll see an expand or collapse all for that whole column. So I could say, let's expand everything all in all the regions, and now I'll see that every single one of these regions is expanded. Similarly, I could collapse them all, collapse all these as well and start all the way at the top. So whenever you collapse something, you'll basically get a subtotal for whatever that grouping was. And then as you expand these, you'll get more details. So just remember that you can click on the top there to expand or collapse. Similarly in here, you can assort ascending or descending. It's always going, if you're going to sort inside a pivot table, it's always going to sort kind of the most innermost field. So in this case, it's going to sort the customers within this region that I'm in. So it's not sorting my regions or my segments, it's always sorting the rightmost field, just so you know. And so maybe the last thing I'll show you on this example is let's collapse all these guys, and we'll expand all them. Is you see that you have a print button here as well. So when you print, you can choose a letter size and whether you want to do it landscape or portrait. In this example, I'm just using the classic QuickSight theme, which is just kind of white and gray. But say you've applied some themes to it, or the author has applied some themes, and maybe the background's a dark blue or something. This is just saying, do you want to print that dark blue, or do you want to print it on white? So once you choose what you want, then it's going to open a preview. And then once you click print, it's basically just going to open your print dialog. So where you can print it to PDF, or you could print it to paper from an actual printer if you'd like. But I'll choose I'm going to print this out to a PDF. And let me go open that. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Trying to zoom in here. But basically, you see that it printed this out. You'll see a page break here. That's where my page break is. So so that's just filling up the space there. So just a quick note, when you print a PDF, it's really good for dashboards and summary level reports. If I had a really long scroll on this, it's not going to capture the scroll. So it basically captures whatever's on the page at that time. So for instance, like in our table here, I had already filtered this down just to the top 30, so this is okay to print. But say I was showing you the top 200 and I've got a long scroll bar, it's only going to capture what fits on the page at that time. So basically just down to there. So just be aware of that when you're printing. If you want to get really long lists of data out, I would recommend using the export to CSV. We also have an export to Excel coming very soon, probably by the end of May. Potentially it'll be in June, but I think it's in preview right now, actually. Um, so the export to Excel will be a little bit different in that when I export this table to Excel, notice how everything's pivoted already, like I've got some years set as columns here. When I export this to Excel right now, everything's going to go into more raw data type format. So what I mean by that is the years are going to become new rows of data and not preserve the kind of pivoted format that I had in that visual where I actually had years of different columns. So the CSV export's always going to look more like this, which is more raw data. Not raw data, but just more how a database would store it. Whereas the new Excel output is going to preserve exactly this pivoted format how I have it, as well as any subtotals or totals that I included. So my totals on the bottom will be in that Excel. If I had subtotals turned on this one, I would see my subtotals. I'll see columns for years. Any kind of number formatting that I've applied is going to be included as well. So it's more, exactly how you formatted in your pivot. That's the one. That's the export to Excel will go just like that. So last thing is you may see a little button here on the left which says filter. So there's an option when an author goes to publish a new dashboard whether to include this ad hoc filtering ability or not. So uh, just to remind you, you have these other sets of controls that are usually set as filters. So sometimes you'll just see these and you'll see this button or this button will be hidden. But if you do see it, it basically allows you to add more filters than what the author had given you. Like for instance, I don't see any controls on this particular tab, but if I want to go add a filter and I do see this button here, then I can apply filters to this. So first it asks you what's the visual you want to apply the filter to. I just click on this one. So I do have a filter here applied on dates, which I could make a change to and say, instead of after this date, I want to change that date filter, for instance, or I want to turn it off altogether. You can do that. Or you want to add a filter on a completely new field. Like maybe I want to go add a filter for my industry field. And when you open that up, you'll see a couple of different types of filters. Usually you're going to leave it on the filter list. And you could say, maybe I want to select all except just a few of these. And it's going to apply that filter in the background to all the sets of numbers here. Use this little arrow to kind of collapse it. And then if you want to hide the filter menu altogether, you just click on that again. So that's just basically how you can add new filters. Now, I only have one visual on this sheet, but if I did have more of them, this area on the top is going to change the scope of that filter. So I could say apply it to all the visuals on this sheet, or just some of them, or just the one visual that I clicked on. And then with date filters, you get a couple of other types of features. So with date filters, there's a couple of options here where I can say choose a time range is the first one, where I can pick a start date or an end date, and an end date. Or if I choose relative dates, you get a different type of UI where I could say, show me just the previous year of data, or the last n years of data, or next n years if you have future-facing data. So that's what this relative date set of filter looks like. Or a top and bottom. This is more applicable to categorical data, like show me the top 10 customers or something like that. Not so much for dates. But even if you go to the time range, you have an option for between, or you could say, you know what, I don't want an end date. I only just want things that are after a certain date. So it's just going to let you choose a start date but no end date. Or conversely, before would choose an end date but no start date. Or if you do equals, then it's exactly just one day versus having a whole range. So lots of different ways of filters. That's just a kind of quick little tutorial on it, but you can feel free to explore that. And yeah, that's about it here for the readers. Just one last example, doing that kind of this is just to show that cascading filter functionality um, a little bit more obviously. So for instance, like if I select Washington, everything is going to filter to Washington, including my time trend. But now if I click on one of these dates, like December 2018, now this table here is going to show me just Washington, just from December 2018, as you can see in these rows. And then just be aware, you can also click on legends to trigger filters too. So like if I want to filter the whole central region versus just clicking on one of the states, sorry, my mouse is a little off there. You can use legends to send filters too, send actions, I should say. All right, and then if you want to go back to your home screen, you just click on this icon in the upper left to get back to the home screen, and you're back to your list of dashboards again. All right, so that concludes our tutorial for all the different ways you can watch to interact with your dashboards as a reader user in QuickSight. Hope you get some great insights out of your data and are able to leverage all of these neat features in here. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.